And again, welcome. So to our webinar today, it's February 20th. I know for us at least, I'm in the DC area and it's snowing a little bit, which makes it even more exciting. And we are here today to go over how to effectively use Altmetrics in your marketing and communication activities. So just a little bit about the agenda and what we'll cover today. Let me introduce myself quickly. My name is Kathy Holland. I'm the Director of Global Publisher Business Development at Digital Science. I'm going to cover basically some quick housekeeping, then do a fast introduction to Altmetric tools and data, and then talk a little bit about how you can start to use them within your marketing and communications departments. I will keep that very high level. Then we're going to move over to Bethanys, who is the social media manager at Taylor & Francis. And she's going to talk about using Altmetric data to boost engagement and track trends on social media. And then last, but certainly not least, we have Mike Kramer from the ASHA journals. He is the content curation and promotion manager. And he's going to talk about how they use Altmetrics in their day-to-day in order to reach a broader audience. And so without further ado, let's get into some of the housekeeping. First up, the session is being recorded. So you will definitely, after the webinar, get an email with a link to the recording. Next, if you have questions, please feel free to pop them into the question box. We are going to take all questions at the end of the webinar. And then thirdly, if you have any, technical difficulties with hearing or anything like that, please, hit the chat feature in GoToWebinar and let us know. All right. Now we are going to get going with some Altmetric basics, just because I know a few of those on the webinar might be newer to the concept of Altmetrics. I always like to just hit on that topic. And, to start with, we think about a definition. So I wanted to share the definition of Altmetrics according to NISO. So, and it's really a broad term that encapsulates the collection of multiple digital indicators related to scholarly work. And, we really think of this as online attention or engagement with scholarly communications. And, a couple things to keep in mind as we talk about this. We really want you to understand that it covers more than just academia. And this is not just about journal articles. Altmetric and Altmetrics track a number of different things, maybe data sets, books, that type of thing. And these are not a replacement to traditional metrics, but a complement to them. So it's definitely another slice of the puzzle. And the other thing to just consider as we go through these presentations, there's Altmetrics as a general concept, and then there is Altmetric, the data science company, which does a lot of what we're going to talk about today. And, the next slide, I'm thinking about what Altmetric is trying to achieve. And I think it's really about empowering people to understand, the attention and impact of a piece of work in a more meaningful way. Because there's really a lot more to content nowadays than just a download. And we typically think of attention as various flavors of attention. And so what you see here is, flavors of attention, which it can be akin to flavors of ice cream. And you have a variety, of course. And with Altmetric, there's where the research lives, and then where it's being talked about. And those can be two very different things. You have content that lives on an online platform, but there might be entire Twitter conversations going on about that piece of content that you may not be aware of. And then Altmetric takes those various flavors of attention and collates them into this nice graphic visualization called the Altmetric donut, where each color in the donut corresponds to one of the flavors of attention. And you have all that data collated so you can get what we call the Altmetric details page, which really gives you kind of the granular information about what's going on, the actual tweet, the actual bit of news, etc. And, getting further into this, I wanted to share a little bit about, what tools does Altmetric offer for publishers? Because some of these tools are going to be used throughout the discussion. And so we have kind of Altmetric badges, Altmetric Explorer, and the Altmetric API. And so for those not familiar with each of these, I wanted to just kind of take you through them as we get further into this. So this is a quick snapshot of an Altmetric badge. You can see kind of the colorful donut. I believe this is an MIT Press book page that has the badge listed on the content. Then I have a quick snapshot of the Altmetric Explorer, which is where all of this data is housed, and it's basically a reporting tool, which we'll get further into later on. And then the third is the Altmetric API, where for those that are really sophisticated and want to slice and dice the data in different ways and maybe display it in different ways. And here's just a quick example of that. So now we're going to get into kind of section 3. So how to use Altmetric for your marketing and communications teams. And as I mentioned before with the tools, we're really going to focus in this section on the information that the Altmetric Explorer can help you yield. So as you get into this, I think at a lot of organizations when they're getting started, there are questions that you have to start to think about in regards to the data. And we've kind of put those out here for you. So you want to think about who's engaging with your work. Are you having an impact? Are there ways that you can improve? And then there's also questions for you. As an organization, what does research success look like? And how do you define impact? Because these things, can be very subjective and are going to be very different for a different organization. One organization might be much more concerned with broad outreach and getting their message out there, where another organization might be more concerned with their influence on public policy, for example. You also want to think about which audiences or stakeholders you want to reach and where those people are. And then what are the information pathways to increased impact in your area? And as we dive into this, you want to really start with kind of segmentation and say, okay, you've got this colorful donut with lots of flavors of attention. What is relevant for your objectives? Because again, this is going to be different for every organization, and it's something that you want to think about as you're getting going. And I'm going to go through a couple of examples of what that might look like. So to start with, I mentioned broad public engagement, which is going to be a lot of social media efforts like Twitter and Facebook. So this is where you're going to want to dive into that data. And so you start to think about, what am I doing on Twitter? What am I doing on Facebook? What does my current attention look like? And where do I want to go from there? You can also have increased broad awareness. For example, Wikipedia, which I always think is a really interesting one. It was something I had, I think when I first started with the company, thought, why are we tracking Wikipedia? Until I realized that in both my personal and professional life, anytime I have a question, that's where I end up. I go to Google and I look for the Wikipedia page. And I think it's a really good kind of real life example of how many people are using Wikipedia and sources like that. So that can really help, with broad awareness being referenced in Wikipedia. And then, of course, another good example is really targeted engagement through Twitter. If there are, kind of certain researchers or research groups you're trying to reach, you're going to want to see if you can find those people, make sure you're following them. If they're tweeting about you, that you're definitely retweeting that type of thing. And the next thing to consider is kind of what are the pathways to your impact? And this, again, is going to look a little bit different for every organization because every organization is different. And one of the things that's helpful when considering this is looking at a typical timeline of attention for an article or a piece of content and what happens. Because in each of these sections, you're going to have a slightly different pathway to impact. If you're really worried about tweets versus news, it's going to be a different, activity you take in order to reach those groups. And diving into, again, kind of a more social media example, just because I want to keep this high level. You want to think about, does social media have an impact? And this is an example of, just kind of a quick little study done where they had kind of a control group of views per day of a piece of content. And then if you look at kind of the social media release date and you look at the effects that that has, you've got, much more broad engagement with that piece of work. And so these are some of the things you're going to want to consider when using Altmetric or Altmetrics, is kind of a before and after approach. What happened prior to, to my social media efforts and what happened afterwards. And so then this segues very nicely into determining your baseline. And I think I'm a big believer in this just overall, because you have to know where you're starting to know where you want to go. And I had mentioned this in my social media example, is you want to figure out where you're starting. And so this is a quick snapshot within the Altmetric Explorer of kind of a timeline of attention. And this is going to look different for every organization. Some of them will have a nice steady stream like this. Some of them will have a big uptick. Some of them might even be losing attention. And so you want to start by figuring out, where am I? And then you can figure out, okay, where do I want to go and how do I get there? And you also want to consider, as you're examining some of this, who is this attention coming from and also where? Because you've got, pieces of information within the Explorer that give you geographical data, such as, where your tweeters are. We also have information, geographical information for policy, Facebook, and news. And that's always very interesting information to look at. You have top research affiliations. Maybe if you're, an organization in the UK, you really want to see, more people affiliated with Australian research institutions tweeting about your work. So things to consider. And then you also get a specific most mentioned grouping where you can see who is maybe tweeting or talking about your content. And did you even know about that? Are those people that you need to engage with? So those are some things to kind of think about. And the last one I really want to touch on is kind of comparing to competition and peers. I think especially in the publisher space, this can be helpful because everybody's at a different point in terms of their social media strategy. So one way to do this is to compare a timeline. So this is kind of publisher 1, publisher 2. And you want to see, in comparison to maybe your peer, where you are. Do I have as much attention as they do? Is it less? Is it more? And am I satisfied with that in comparison to what some of my competition is doing? The other way you can start to look at this is if you look kind of across the board. This is a nice side-by-side comparison of the number of outputs for, 3 various publishers. And then, kind of their mentions. And you can really start to see kind of across the board how things are doing. And what I think is interesting about this in particular is this data for a different publisher can sometimes be very surprising. A larger publisher might have a lot of weight to throw behind social media, but a smaller, more niche society may really excel in a policy field, which is extremely important, but another kind of what I call flavor of impact that, they may not have considered. And, last of all, you really want to start to interrogate kind of some of that data and not just for your competitor, but also for yourself. So what types of attention are you receiving, and are they sources that you care about? Are there other sources that you do care about that you are not getting attention from. You want to think about what you can learn from some other publishers that have really, maybe refined a strategy. And are there specific key influencers that they have that you want to follow? Maybe specific researchers in a certain field, things like that. And you want to think about, can you kind of replicate that model or engage with those channels? And these are all things that, to take into consideration as you really dive into data and start to further refine your social media strategy. And at this point, we are actually going to now jump over to Bethanys, who is going to talk a little bit more about her day-to-day and how they're using Altmetric. Let's see, Bethanys, I have just made you the presenter.
Great. Just give me 1 second and I will get my presentation up.
All right, and then I will go on mute so I do not disrupt you.
Great, thank you. Hi, so I'm going to be talking today about how we use Altmetric data to boost engagement and track trends on social media. So just a quick intro to me, and I will get rid of this as well. So I'm Bethanys, so I'm the social media manager at Taylor & Francis, and I'm based in the journal side of the business. So I've been in my role for about 18 months, and prior to that I was working in the charity sector, so I'm actually very new to publishing, and so with the rest of my team actually over the past year. So we spent a lot of time thinking about how we wanted to use this information that we were pulling in from Altmetric into different bits of activity and our strategy. And actually, we were really fortunate as well to get some great input and support from the team at Altmetric. So thank you very much for that.
Bethanys, I can't hear you. Hello?
Can you
Bethanys?
now?
Yes, you just kind of faded out a little bit.
Thank you. Thanks. Sorry, my slides aren't changing. Give me a sec. I'll just try and get them stuck. Great, there you go. So sorry about that. So how have we integrated Altmetric data into our social media strategy? So this has actually been in a few different ways, and I was going to cover 3 main areas today. And that covers how we've been able to monitor the data pulled in by Altmetric, and also develop supplementary social media content out of that, in addition to some big campaigns. But then also some specific campaigns that we've been able to pull together over the past year based on data that we pulled from the Altmetric Explorer tool. Sorry, my slides keep getting stuck. So the first way that we've been doing this is through having a weekly check-in on trending articles and also promoting those articles. So we're really fortunate to have an in-house research and analytics team who compile a weekly report, and they send out the top 10 articles that we've published that are trending on Altmetric each week. This is circulated to both editorial and journals marketing, and the top 10 articles are given additional free access if they don't have this already. So what we do with this information is we promote these articles on our subject accounts primarily, and we'll do this throughout the week after the email's gone out on Monday. We normally do this on Tuesday and Wednesday because we found that these are the key times for researchers in most of our areas, but we do share those throughout the week as needed. In addition, the press team also shares relevant articles on their press Twitter account, and as well as the original research articles, they're able to share media articles that they've found and located through the Altmetric Explorer tool. And we also share the top trending article on our group level profiles. So those are the corporate social accounts. So this is a quick way for us to share some of the most exciting research that we've published across our portfolio, and also spotlight those researchers and generate engagement on our social channels. The second way that we use Altmetric data in our social media activity is to track authors, hashtags, and trends. So starting with authors, what we do is we take a deeper dive into the Altmetric data. And this is through the Altmetric details page, looking for specific things. So normally authors, so what we do is we go through the tweets. So sometimes there can be something quite quick and we can identify what we're looking for quite easily. Sometimes it does take a bit more scrolling through, but we've found that this is something that's had a really good return on investment for us. We don't always have the Twitter profiles, for example, for relevant authors recorded on our systems, or sometimes they've set up new ones, or there's additional like secondary authors that we don't have a record of. So this is quite a good way for us to find these details. What we'll do with this information is we will engage with these authors that we've located through following them, liking and sharing their posts or commenting on them, and obviously also tagging them in future tweets as well. We do have a social listening tool in-house already, but we found that the Altmetric Explorer tool works really well as an additional piece of kit specific to the research community. Another way that we've been using this tool in the data is to find subject-specific hashtags. So we really try to discourage marketers, and actually within our team as well, from using quite generic hashtags, because obviously we want to feed in as well as we possibly can to specific research communities. This is something that isn't always that easy to do because we're not always subject specialists working on the channels, or we have very different backgrounds, and working across 35 accounts as well. Sometimes it can be quite difficult to locate exactly what we're looking for. So this has been a great way to tap into those specific communities across research and also wider, and to see how they're talking about this kind of content online. So one example I've given here is just quite a simple hashtag of MECFS. And whilst using this in a tweet, we were able to generate quite a lot of engagement organically, and you can just see that on one post here. The final way that I was just going to cover is that we've been able to track high-performing subject areas on social media. So I'm a big believer that not all subject areas are necessarily suitable for all social channels or always social media in general. And those subdisciplines within those subject areas really differ, especially on within subject areas like medicine and health, actually. So it's quite a useful tool to be able to see what works best and what doesn't, what the mentions and the outputs are, as you can see on the screen, and that's been able to inform specific campaigns that we've put out as well as our overarching strategy. The final thing that I was going to talk about were the Altmetric top 10 campaigns that we ran last year. So we did this across a few different subject channels. This isn't useful for all subject areas, and of course at Taylor & Francis we work across the sciences, medicine, humanities, social sciences and arts. So we found that for arts and humanities it isn't always so useful, but for the social sciences and hard sciences and medicine, these are the kind of areas that we wanted to pull into these top 10 campaigns. So the example that I'm giving today is from the campaign that we ran on our education research account. We did share a couple of posts on Facebook, but this was a campaign that we predominantly ran through Twitter because we found that that's where the most engaged community was for this subject area. So the aims of the campaign were to showcase some of the best research that we published in this area, follow a growth on the education arena profile, and to engage with authors and key opinion leaders. So we were able to pull together the information on the top 10 performing articles from the Altmetric Explorer tool. And we pulled this into a report and then went through and really interrogated the data behind that. So could we find authors? Could we find those hashtags, subject-specific hashtags that I was talking about earlier? We created a landing page with the full list on and some additional background information around this. And we had overarching posts like the one that I featured in the slide there, and also posts just talking about the individual articles. We created some short video clips focusing on the specific articles featured, and also we're able to share news stories that we'd located through the Altmetric Explorer tool to kind of beef up the content going out on that channel throughout the weeks. So what were our results from this? So we had 5,600 organic clicks from Twitter, 32 new followers, engagement with 2 new key opinion leaders, over 37,000 video views, and over 1.5k other engagements, so for example, retweets and likes. The main things that we were interested in on this were the click-throughs, so that was a key metric for this campaign, and also engaging with those key people on Twitter. Another really nice thing to see from this was that there was lots of discussion around the papers that we shared. And this was constructive discussion about the actual research, which was great as well, and something that we're always keen to generate on these channels. This was very much an organically driven campaign. So we did do a small amount of paid work to boost this, but it was less than £100. And actually, we found that these campaigns that we've generated using this Altmetric data is perfect for that organic activity. So if that's what you're looking for, this is probably a great tool for you. This particular channel that I've talked about in this campaign is one that we're still hoping to grow and does still need a bit of care and attention. So the figures that we got from this campaign were actually really positive, and we think that by replicating this activity again, we could either increase or at least match this kind of engagement. Something else to note was that pulling this together wasn't very labor intensive. It was quite easy to get the data, and it was very easy to see how we could pull this together into an interesting campaign. So it didn't take much time or manpower to pull this together at all. Following up on that, we were able to have some discussion posts from some of the featured authors in the top 10. So this wasn't something that we just ran for a week and then sort of left and didn't share again on our channels at all. It was something that we were able to continuously generate content from. And when we had content got gaps on the channel for the rest of the year, we were able to reshare this top 10 campaign. So that was great to have that bit of evergreen content over a longer period of time. Going forward, this is going to be the kind of activity that we're going to repeat. So we're going to have some larger top 10 campaigns again running towards the end of this year probably, and then also giving a bit more information as well on using Altmetric and that data and how that could be useful to our authors. So yeah, those are the key ways that we've been using it in the team. I have put questions here, but actually I think we're going to do those at the end, so I can pass over to the next presenter.
Okay, thank you, Bethany. Great to hear those real life examples. Let's see, now I'm going to have Mike become the presenter. All right, Mike, do you have the wheel?
Looks like I do.
All right, then I am going to go ahead and mute so we don't get any feedback, and take it away.
Hello, everyone. I am Mike Kramer. I am from the American Speech-Language-Hearing Association's journal program, ASHA Journals. I'm here to talk a little bit about how Altmetric is a tool we are using in knowledge translation, which is a major initiative of our association. So first off, let me tell you a little bit about the ASHA Journals. We are the scholarly publishing program of the American Speech-Language-Hearing Association. We have 5 journals in total, 4 peer-reviewed scholarly journals, and 1 peer-reviewed scholarly review journal. The distinction is something I couldn't tell you in exact words. Our Perspectives of the ASHA Special Interest Groups Journal has a group that runs it that wanted a distinction, so that's why we have that. We've been publishing for over 80 years and maintain an archive of over 80 years of communication sciences and disorders research. And we are the publishing wing of the association, which has over 204,000 members. These are speech pathologists, audiologists, and speech and hearing scientists. So I like to say that we are a small publisher with a bit of a Napoleon complex. We like to punch above our weight a little bit. So we really try to integrate a lot of different initiatives and promotion into our activities, and Altmetric has proven to be an indispensable tool in that. So to start, the association has a number of strategic objectives. The one specifically that we work in is to enhance the generation, publication, knowledge translation, and implementation of clinical research. So a big part of our audience is the actual clinicians, and there's a drive to increase evidence-based practice and research-based practice. So what's really great about Altmetric is that compared to some of the traditional metrics we can use to gauge the attention something is receiving, like citations, we can really see not just what researchers are getting out of it, but also what clinicians are talking about. And that's really our target audience in a lot of ways, considering our position as an association publisher. So we have already met some of our goals here by doubling our research output, and it's been really helpful in the process of increasing the amount of research we're putting out to have something so easy to use like Altmetric to help us gauge how we're doing on getting that content out to clinicians. So one of the ways in which we're using Altmetric is our consumer-facing data. So this is going to be what we are showing from Altmetric on our websites and things of that nature. So our first example here is we use the Altmetric donut badge on our article pages. So our publishing platform is called ASHA Wire. It's where we host all of our journals plus the ASHA Leader magazine. And on each article page for the journals and Perspectives of the ASHA Special Interest Groups, you'll see in the bottom right corner, there's the badge there. I'll increase the size. So the great thing about this is that we actually just changed our publishing platform, and this gave us the ability to present the Altmetric data in a much larger, much more noticeable space. That sidebar where it lives is actually sticky, so we have it following the reader all the way down the page because we really want to encourage them to see this, bright colored donut and click through. One of the reasons for this is because we think that with a clinician-based audience that we tend to have, we want them to see what conversations are already going on, and this is just a really easy way for them to find that without us having to kind of manually curate things for them through Twitter. We do a lot of social media campaigns, but obviously there's only so much we can keep up with. One of the great things about this too is it's really easy to implement, and the Altmetric team's been really helpful on providing support on that. Second, we have a trending research widget on our homepage. So this widget is not data-driven specifically. We actually manually populate this. So what's really great about how Altmetric helps us create this is that we can get on Altmetric Explorer, look for particular areas of interest or particular articles that are really generating a lot of buzz, and we can feature them here to try to draw on an even larger audience. We can also kind of see what conversations are happening. For instance, if for some reason everybody's talking about swallowing and swallowing disorders, we can go and find some of the recent relevant research and plug it into this to try and boost the awareness of what ASHA Journals is publishing on that topic. So Altmetric's been basically essential in our ability to create tools like this, because without that data so accessible, I don't know that we would have the manpower to actually put something like this together. Next up, we have a trending research widget that we use on our Context blog. Context exists on the ASHA Journals Academy. It is our author resources website, as well as editors and reviewer resources. So the trending widget, which I'll highlight here, if you look down here, we're showing the articles that are highest rated on Altmetric. We can adjust that from 1 year all the way down to 1 month for the time frame. Shows you the donut, what it was published in, and when it was last mentioned. So what's really great about this is totally data driven. We have some code that pulls in from the Altmetric API that just automatically populates this for us. So it's very low maintenance. It took me maybe 5-10 minutes to get this fully set up. And it's been something that people have really appreciated. We've got a lot of positive feedback on having this option there for people to really just jump in quick and see what other clinicians and other researchers are talking about. The next thing we have is similar to what Bethany was talking about before. We were doing blog posts, and I hate this word, but listicles for trending research. This has been really great for us in terms of boosting our Twitter followers and such, just because these are heavily shared articles, or blog posts rather, that are really good at grabbing attention and pulling people in. To give you an idea, we posted this one recently that highlighted our 10 most shared articles from 2018, and that was data that we got from Altmetric to determine what was most shared. And within about 2 days, one of the authors asked us if they could open up access to it, like we do free access to those articles for about 2 weeks, specifically because after we published this, they got so many requests for copies of the article. And this is really great because it gives us an opportunity to find what's really striking a chord with people and easily put it out there and boost it even further. So next up, we'll talk a little bit about engaging authors using Altmetric. This is a really important side of the Altmetric tool for us, primarily because we do a lot of promotion. It's my whole job. And we're really trying to increase our efforts on that. And the truth is that a lot of it's very time consuming. So we need to encourage authors to actually engage in that. A lot of times authors, when the whole publishing process is completed, if you think about it, they've conducted the research, they've written the article, they've submitted that for peer review, they've done multiple revisions potentially, and then it finally gets accepted, and then page proofs and the whole publication process, just very time consuming. So when they get to the finish line, or what they think is the finish line, it's really easy for them to just say, okay, I'm done. And what we really need to do is convince authors that that's really just the first step, and that there's more they can do to increase the impact of the research. So some of our current promotion efforts, we do blog posts, as I was talking about, highlighting special issues, forums, and notable articles. We find out about a lot of those notable articles through Altmetric Explorer, and we look at what is really garnering attention. We also have plain language summaries through Kudos. Social media campaigns, we have our own Twitter handle, as well as campaigns through the larger ASHA Twitter account, such as our Research Tuesday promotions. We do video interviews with authors. These are some of the hardest to orchestrate, and one of the ones that we really need some help convincing authors that this is a worthwhile use of their time. We also encourage them to do things like research communication, infographics, and videos and such that are easily shared. We have a collaboration with company Editage for producing those. And also we do a hybrid open access model where authors can opt into open access for a fee. It's the minority of our business, but it's still an important revenue driver, and we like to encourage people to do it. So Altmetric gives us the ability to show people how open access articles fare in attention compared to non-open access very quickly. So to get authors on board with this, Altmetric has proven to be a really just invaluable tool. For one, the data are granular. It's one score for multiple kinds of attention, and you can really break it down into little bits. Something that's become really important for us is they've integrated a policy mentions into Altmetrics. So that's really important considering our evidence-based practice focus. And that's something that's really encouraging for authors and clinicians to see on that attention score. Second off, the reporting is practically instant. And what's really great about this for a publisher like us is that we have a citation half-life anywhere between 8 and 10 years. So it can take us a really long time to see how an article is performing in terms of citations. So, with Altmetric, we get an instant view of how the conversation is going and kind of an idea of how many people are really using the research. Meanwhile, it's very user-friendly. The dashboard for the article pages is really easy to navigate. As you were saying earlier, it's just simple tabs up at the top that you can click through and see specific Facebook, Twitter mentions. It breaks down the individual levels. And it's got that bright colored donut, which is just really inviting. So one of the things we really need to do is increase author awareness of Altmetric, and that's something we've been working on. For one, we increased the prominence and size of our badges. You can see the old ones from a previous publishing platform and how much bigger we've made them. I think that gives you an idea of what we think about its impact. We have added a section on our ASHA Journals Academy about maximizing impact with a page specifically about Altmetric, trying to gear authors towards seeing that and actually taking a look at their dashboard for it. We're also thinking about doing email communications and awareness campaigns, including blog posts and social media posts specifically about Altmetric, just to kind of continue to drive this as a tool for us, because the more people who are seeing it, the more data we collect, because they'll go and they'll join those conversations. Future efforts, we are looking to create a content and promotion calendar. Altmetric is, again, an invaluable tool for this because it gives us an idea of when some of our peak attention times are. We see a big uptick in terms of clinicians and such participating in online conversations during the summer, because of school being out. So that gives us an idea of when we can really push some of our bigger campaigns. Meanwhile, we're also trying to increase our promotion efforts. And what's really great about the Altmetric tool is that it enables us to see what promotion efforts are actually really working. And we can see if, during author interviews is actually increasing our attention score, or if, the plain language summaries are helping people, are making it more accessible to, non-researchers and such. So we can really see that in real time using the Altmetric tool. But that's everything for me. That's how we're implementing it. I hope it's been a useful idea of how a smaller publisher can implement this tool.
Okay, thank you very much, Mike. That was really informative. And so now that we have kind of gone through all our speakers and gone over a number of things, we actually have quite a few questions that have filtered in, which is fantastic. So I think what I'm going to do is just kind of run down a few of these questions. And then I think some of these are definitely more for Bethany and some of them are a little bit more for Mike. But we can kind of go from there. So I think the first question, Bethany, you might want to unmute. We have, are hashtags still useful? And I know, Bethany, you had talked about hashtags in your presentation. So do you want to field that, please?
I'm guessing that's a general, are hashtags still useful question. Yeah. So yeah, I would say definitely. And I mean, a lot of people are going to be following conversations through hashtags rather than just following specific accounts. People are generally following content rather than just individual handles. I mean, it's always a bit of a mix of that, but I'd say they're definitely useful. And that's how people are going to locate you and the things that you're sharing. So some hashtags are more useful than others. So one thing that I'm trying to make sure nobody uses within Taylor and Francis, within marketing and on our channels, is things like hashtag free. There's no point. It's not specific to the research community, and you're not really going to get much out of including that in one of your posts. But if it's something that's really tapping into ongoing conversations and communities that already exist online, I think it's definitely worth using.
Okay, great. Thank you. Another one, I think, I'd be curious to hear from both Mike and Bethany about this, is what are the pros and cons of individual Twitter accounts for each journal versus an overarching publisher account?
I could speak to that a little bit. So for us, for instance, we actually have two Twitter handles. We have one for that's at ASHA Journals and one that's at SIG Perspectives, because we have that fifth journal that's more specific to clinicians. That has been beneficial to us just because, we can kind of divide the content up a little bit, and the ASHA journals may sometimes focus a little bit more on generating conversations amongst researchers, and SIG Perspectives may do a little bit better in generating conversations among clinicians. So if you have that sort of divide between your journals, that could be useful. Generally, though, like four of our journals are represented by the ASHA Journals Twitter handle, though, and I don't know that we would ever want to divide them. I think there's a lot of crossover in terms of the readership. So to me, if you don't have that kind of divide in readership like we do with the four journals compared to that one, I'd probably just stick to one.
Do you want to answer that question as well?
Yes, please, Bethany, if you have some thoughts on that, share.
So I think for us as quite a large publisher who has such a broad portfolio of different journals, I think those journal level accounts and the accounts that are obviously run by staff at Taylor & Francis can really be very complementary to each other. And I think they can serve similar functions in some ways and very different functions in other ways. And it really depends what the people, the editorial boards involved in those journals want to achieve. But obviously, if you've got your own journal level account, you can be a bit more specific and you have a bit more control over the content that's going out. It might be easier for you to engage with specific authors on a day-to-day basis. Whereas obviously with our overarching subject level accounts and our corporate level accounts, they're covering quite a wide range of subjects and journals and thousands of different articles. So we'll never be able to be as specific to like individual bits of work or maybe like particular conversations as you would be able to be through like a journal level account. And it also puts a bit more of like a human face on the editorial board as well, which I think can be really nice, especially, you've got to think it can be very intimidating, especially for early career researchers if they're submitting their work. And if you can show that the people who are actually reading that and responding to them are real people with similar research interests, I think that can be something that's really positive for those journal profiles.
Great. Thank you very much, Bethany. And I actually have, Bethany, it looks like a specific question has come in for you. For the top 10 campaigns, did you select the best performing papers of all time? Or did you use a set timeline, for, highest attention during 2018?
So we actually ran them mid-year. So we'd done the previous 12 months. So the top 10 in the previous 12 months.
All right, great. Thank you. And I think this is for both of our presenters. Can you talk a bit more about how to convince authors to engage in promotional efforts, video interviews, etc.? And what sorts of engagement have you found to be the most effective in furthering the reach of an author's paper?
I can touch on that. So that actually has been really a big part of our drive, is getting authors more on board. So initially what we did was we kind of had to get a little bit of that content out there so people could see what sort of things we were trying to make and what effect they could have. So we had like some special issues and forums, and we encouraged members of our editorial board, in our first case, the editor-in-chief of one of the journals that was publishing a forum, to do a video. And then we used that as an example. And, we were able to show like the views it was getting on YouTube and such. And that was really encouraging for a lot of people to actually get an idea of the content. So if you have like a particularly engaged editorial board member, like maybe you can get them on board first and then authors will follow. And I really think that those videos have been some of our most successful in terms of like generating additional interest. You know, people who maybe won't take the time to read a full blog post will watch a 2-minute video. With that said, our social media campaigns, I think, always end up generating the most amount of attention, especially our ones that go with the whole association's Twitter account, because we can potentially get hundreds of mentions through that, whereas like our videos maybe only get a couple hundred views total.
Yeah, I guess I can answer that as well. In terms of getting authors to promote their work and also engaging in different kinds of content, we've done quite a bit of work within our wider team, sharing resources on how authors can share their work on Twitter specifically, just because that's a key platform of researchers, obviously. So we do have those resources available, and we've actually done some Twitter chats as well for those who are already on Twitter about how they could maximize the potential of their work, and also for editorial boards. So we do have those things available on our author services site, if people are interested in looking those up, and we do share them as well quite often from our company and subject accounts, so you'll be able to see them there. I found when I've been talking to authors that some of them are more comfortable with the format than others, and I'm actually quite keen that often they just stick with the format that works best for them. So sometimes I've approached an author and I've said, do you want to do a Twitter chat? And they've turned around and said, oh my God, no way, I'm just not comfortable with that. I don't feel comfortable with Twitter. But then they've been able to do a blog post for us instead, or something like that, or just been able to give us a quote about their work or something that they've been doing that we've been able to share on social media, pull into a short video to share on our channels, or to host on one of our secondary tier sites. So I think it's really about working with them and giving them encouragement, but understanding if a specific content format really doesn't work for them.
Okay, thank you, Bethany. And now we have another question for Mike. How did ASHA compile the most shared data?
Yeah, so actually one of my coworkers, Frank, did the legwork on that, so I can't speak specifically to how he did it, but I do have the general idea. So what we did was we went into the Altmetric Explorer, and we did a custom search for all of our journals, and I have that search saved so it's easy to access. And then one of the nice things you can do is you can go into your mentions and you can specify the type of attention that you're looking for. So he specified Facebook, Twitter, the social platforms to compile the most shared. And then it was pretty simple after that. We were able to kind of sort by our highest scores for that particular type of attention. And honestly, all in all, I think the process took them maybe 5 or 10 minutes. It's really easy. And like I said, that's one of the things we really like about it, just because you don't have to put too much work into it to get that sort of output.
Great. Thank you, Mike. So the next question we've just got a couple more questions, but we have a few minutes left here. It was mentioned that you use Kudos for lay summaries, and somebody is asking, do you require this or highly encourage it? And do you find that social media posts with lay summaries get more attention?
Yeah, so Kudos is something that we're trying to encourage more of. I wish I could say we had more engagement on it than we do. I do believe we have it integrated into our submission platform right now, but it is not required. I don't think that that's something that we're going to change, but I do think we're going to start trying to increase our promotion campaigns around it. We found that ones that have the lay summaries do work well for gathering more attention. Unfortunately, our data set on that is not big enough to really say that for sure, but hopefully in the next couple of months, as we push that more and start encouraging more authors to participate in Kudos, we'll get a better idea.
All right, great, thank you. I think I just have 1 to 2 more questions here, and then I think we'll all basically be able to wrap everything up. Somebody has actually asked me, what was the metric in the 3rd column on the slide comparing 3 publishers? And overall, that was just basically a quick statistical analysis done internally on those 3 publishers. It's not a specific metric. So it's something that can be put together if you want to get a sense of where do I compare to some of my competitors. And then I think the last question that I have is, I have a question. Somebody is trying to embed a link to our ETOCs that include activity for the last 12 months rolling, and there still appears to be no way to do this, any progress. So that is a fantastic question. I am going to have to check internally with some of the Altmetric team. So to that question asker, I will get back to you separately via email. And it looks like there are no further questions. So I think that wraps everything up 3 minutes early, which is just about on time. Everybody, please in the next couple of days, look for, a follow-up email with the link to the recording in case there's anything you want to take a look at. And if there are any other questions, please do feel free to reach out to us. And so thank you all for attending on this, like I said, snowy in DC for us day. And we look forward to the next webinar. Have a great rest of your day.